Untold Stories. The Times Square Ghost. Cold Spots, Crowds and Chaos. Chapter 1. The haunting begins. The sun set on a bustling Times Square, casting long shadows that intermingled with the neon lights, creating an interplay of darkness and vibrant color. On any other evening, this place would be the epicenter of life, a symbol of New York City's indomitable spirit. But tonight, there was an unusual chill in the air, one that wasn't coming from the autumn breeze. Julia, a tourist from Texas, had always dreamt of experiencing the magic of Times Square. As she walked, her eyes darted from one towering billboard to another. But as she neared the old Lyric Theater, a cold spot made her shiver. The temperature drop was drastic and swift, like passing through an invisible curtain. She hugged her jacket tighter, blaming it on the city's unpredictable weather, and moved on. Inside a popular diner on 7th Avenue, the murmurs of conversations filled the space. The sizzle of grills and the clinking of dishes were familiar, comforting sounds. Then, suddenly, a phantom sound echoed through the establishment, the distinct tapping of old-fashioned leather shoes on the tiled floor. The sound grew louder, closer, until it was right next to Sam, the diner's longtime waiter. He looked down but saw nothing. Meanwhile, inside a tucked-away antique bookstore, Robert, the elderly store owner, dusted off an old leather-bound journal. It had been left in a box of donated books. The cover was worn, but the name, Nathaniel, was still discernible, etched in fading gold lettering. Curious, Robert began to read. The journal detailed the life of a business owner in Times Square during the tumultuous years of the Great Depression. Dreams shattered, love lost, and a relentless drive to survive the harshest of times. Outside, unaware of the journal's existence, the city continued its vibrant routine. Street performers attracted crowds, while nearby, a tourist couple argued about their itinerary. It was a scene of normalcy until, inexplicably, the ground beneath them began to rumble. From the shadows, a full-bodied specter began to materialize, barely visible to the naked eye. It stood at the corner, watching, waiting. To those who could see him, he appeared to be a man from another time, dressed in an old-fashioned suit, his face a map of old regrets and sorrows. Late into the night, two friends, Alex and Mia, sat at a cafe discussing their plans for the week. Mia was in the middle of describing a Broadway show she wanted to see when her coffee cup slid off the table. Startled, she watched as the coffee spilled in a distinct pattern, the outline of Times Square. Alex, always the skeptic, dismissed it as a mere accident. "It's just the wind, Mia," he said, trying to hide his own unease. But the wind couldn't account for the fact that their names, Alex and Mia, now appeared written in coffee drips. Back in the antique bookstore, Robert's reading was interrupted by the chime of the door. He looked up to find the store empty. Shrugging, he turned his attention back to the journal, only to discover the pages now blank, save for one line written in rushed, desperate handwriting. They must know the truth. Outside, the temperature continued to drop. Cold spots multiplied, each one a reminder of the spectral presence that now haunted Times Square. Unbeknownst to the thousands present, an old spirit had awakened, and the boundaries of his domain had been set. Within these 10 city blocks, a tale of revenge, redemption, and supernatural phenomena had just begun. The city that never sleeps was about to face a haunting it would never forget. Chapter 2. Mysterious Occurrences. The morning light filtering through the skyscrapers seemed deceptively ordinary. Times Square was coming alive with its customary vigor. Honking taxis, determined pedestrians, and tourists with cameras at the ready. But beneath the mundane, a palpable tension stretched, taut and humming. At Luigi's Italian Bistro, the staff was setting up for lunch hour. Maria, the head chef, was bustling around the kitchen, arranging ingredients for the day's specials. As she reached for a bottle of olive oil, it shot across the counter, narrowly missing her. Stunned, she turned to her sous chef, Diego, who had also witnessed the inexplicable event. Neither spoke, the gravity of the moment weighing them down. Across the square, at a souvenir store, Emma, the young cashier, was straightening displays. As she adjusted a rack of postcards featuring iconic city landmarks, she froze. One card, depicting an old sepia-toned photograph of Times Square during the Great Depression, caught her attention. Standing amidst the crowd was a familiar figure, a man in an old-fashioned suit, his face wrought with emotion. It was Nathaniel, unmistakably so. As Emma reached out, the postcard flew from the rack and hovered mid-air before gently floating back down. Outside, a street musician played his saxophone, the smooth jazz contrasting sharply with the sharp, angular surroundings. Midway through his set, the music warped, distorting into an eerie tune from a bygone era. Confused, the musician stopped playing, but the haunting melody continued, echoing off the buildings. Word spread fast about these strange occurrences. Locals whispered, exchanged stories, and began to eye every shadow with suspicion. Legends about the ghost of Times Square, once dismissed as mere folklore, now found new believers. Among the skeptics was Detective Richard Hayes, a seasoned officer with the NYPD, known for his logical thinking and pragmatic approach. The growing unease in the area was now impossible to ignore, with reports flooding in. He decided to pay a visit to the one place he believed might hold answers, the old bookstore where the journal had been found. Upon entering, the rich scent of aged paper and leather enveloped him. Robert, the store owner, looked up from his desk and met Hayes' eyes with a mix of relief and trepidation. "I assume you're here about the occurrences?" Robert ventured, his voice quivering slightly. Detective Hayes nodded, pulling out the now viral photograph of Nathaniel. "This man. I've heard he's connected to the events in Times Square." Robert hesitated for a moment before fetching the journal. "It all began with this," he said, placing it in front of Hayes. As Hayes leafed through the pages, Robert recounted the story of Nathaniel's life, his struggles, and the mysterious message that had appeared. As they spoke, a gust of wind blew through the store, even though all windows and doors were shut. The pages of the journal fluttered wildly before settling on a particular entry, a detailed account of a tragic event that had occurred right outside the store decades ago. Simultaneously, back in Times Square, a crowd gathered around a giant LED screen. A live feed from a news helicopter showed an aerial view of the area. But instead of the expected bustling scene, the display showed Times Square as it had been during the 1930s, with horse-drawn carriages, men in hats, and women in long dresses. At its center stood Nathaniel, his spectral form gazing upward, reaching out towards the helicopter. The image held for a tense minute before flickering back to the present-day Times Square. The crowd's gasps were audible, the shared shock binding them together. As the sun dipped lower, casting a golden hue over the city, the frequency and intensity of paranormal events increased. Windows cracked with no apparent cause, phantom footsteps echoed in empty alleyways, and orbs of light danced around streetlights. The once vibrant heart of New York now held a haunting melancholy. Late in the evening, as Mia walked home, her path was blocked by an apparition of Nathaniel. Though his form was translucent, His eyes held a depth of emotion that was unmistakably human. He extended a hand towards her, an unspoken plea evident in his gesture. Taken aback, Mia stepped back, her heart racing. Just as suddenly as he appeared, Nathaniel vanished, leaving Mia in a state of shock and wonder. As night settled over the city, the eerie events of the day weighed heavily on its residents. The boundaries of reality had been stretched, and the tales of the ghost of Times Square had moved from legend to a chilling reality. The city that had seen it all was now in the grip of a haunting like no other, and the mystery of Nathaniel's restless spirit was only beginning to unfold. Chapter 3. Whispers of the past. The dawn's muted light unveiled a Times Square that felt almost unrecognizable. What was once a symbol of modernity and vitality was now cloaked in an ambiance of suspense. The city's very heartbeat seemed altered, synchronized to the rhythm of a past that refused to be forgotten. Detective Hayes, after the revelations from the bookstore, decided to dig deeper into Nathaniel's history. Records from the early 20th century were stored in the city's archives, a labyrinthine space below the public library. The air here was stale, filled with the smell of old documents and whispered stories from days gone by. He began his search, sifting through old newspapers and property records. Hours passed, the weight of the past pressing upon him. Then, he stumbled upon a headline from 1933. Tragic accident at Times Square. Prominent businessman perishes. The accompanying photograph showed a scene of chaos, with a crushed street cart and, at its center, a figure that bore a chilling resemblance to Nathaniel. As he read, Hayes pieced together the story. Nathaniel had been a thriving businessman, his ventures a cornerstone of the square. But as the depression deepened, his fortunes dwindled, debts mounted, and despair took hold. That fateful day, distraught and overwhelmed, Nathaniel met his tragic end, crushed beneath the wheels of a speeding carriage. The detective's hands trembled as he grasped the implications. The epicenter of Nathaniel's haunting, the boundaries of his spectral prison, mirrored the very area where he once lived, loved, and ultimately perished. Back in Times Square, Mia, still shaken from her encounter with Nathaniel, met with Alex. Over a cup of steaming coffee, she recounted her experience, her voice faltering. "Alex," she began, "I felt this connection, like he was trying to tell me something." Skeptical, Alex leaned back, considering. "Mia, this city is filled with stories. Just because you had a strange encounter doesn't mean." His words were cut short as the cafe was plunged into darkness. Cold spots intensified, their icy fingers crawling up the spines of patrons. From the gloom, faint residual hauntings began to play out like ghostly reenactments, scenes of Nathaniel's life. Customers witnessed fleeting moments. Nathaniel courting a young woman, arguing with a debtor, laughing with friends, and, most chillingly, his final desperate moments. The lights flickered back, revealing a shaken clientele. Alex, now pale, looked at Mia. "Okay, I believe you." The haunting had garnered media attention, with reporters and paranormal enthusiasts flocking to Times Square. Among them was Alara, a renowned medium known for her ability to communicate with spirits. Alara, with her raven black hair and piercing blue eyes, sat up in the heart of the square, ready to conduct a seance. A circle of onlookers formed, their collective breaths held in anticipation. As the medium began to chant, the atmosphere grew charged. Orbs of light floated above, electronic devices glitched and malfunctioned, and a tangible energy pulsed through the air. After moments that felt like an eternity, Alara's voice rang out, echoing with a resonance that was not her own. "Why can't you see? The truth lies buried, waiting to set me free. The message, cryptic yet desperate, left the crowd in stunned silence. Alara, her strength drained from the connection, managed to utter, "Nathaniel's spirit is tethered, bound by a truth yet to be uncovered." Late into the night, as the city grappled with its new reality, Mia had a revelation. Remembering the journal from the bookstore, she decided to visit Robert. Perhaps, within its pages, lay the answers to Nathaniel's desperate plea. The bell above the bookstore door jingled as Mia entered. Robert, recognizing her, gestured her over. Together, they pored over the journal, searching for clues. Hours passed, their eyes strained, and just as hope waned, Mia discovered a hidden compartment within the book's spine. Inside was a folded letter, its edges yellowed with age. Written in Nathaniel's unmistakable hand, it revealed a confession of love to a woman named Clara, regrets over mistakes made, and a hidden treasure that he hoped would secure Clara's future. It spoke of a location, cryptically described, where he had hidden his remaining wealth. The implications were immense. Could this treasure be the buried truth Nathaniel spoke of? And would its discovery finally grant his restless spirit peace? As Mia left the bookstore, the weight of her discovery heavy on her shoulders, the first light of dawn painted the horizon. A new day in Times Square beckoned, and with it, the promise of unraveling the mystery that held the city in its eerie grip. Chapter 4. The haunting symphony. Times Square, a haven of lights and life, had shifted into an arena of shadows and whispers. The spectral embrace intensified, and even during the day, the sun seemed reluctant to shine too brightly upon it. Mia and Alex met at a quiet diner, the buzz of conversation drowned out by the weight of the previous night's revelation. The letter's cryptic message hinted at a treasure, but the description of its location was puzzling. It spoke of where the music of the city is loudest and the past meets the present. Mia, Alex began, pensively swirling his coffee. Times Square is a huge place. This could be anywhere. She nodded, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. But think about it, Alex. Where in this city does the past truly meet the present? And what's the loudest music in Times Square? Alex's eyes lit up. The old theaters. They've been around since Nathaniel's time and are still in operation. The music. It could be a reference to the shows. Mia's face brightened. Exactly. We should start there. The first on their list was the renowned Orpheum Theater, a majestic relic of the past, still hosting Broadway shows. Its golden interiors and plush seats had been witness to a century of stories, both on and off the stage. Mia and Alex, with the theater manager's reluctant permission, began their exploration. As they stood on the stage, the haunting intensities became palpable. Phantom sounds resonated. Soft murmurs, fleeting footsteps, the echo of a long-gone audience's applause. The very air shimmered, a dance of light anomalies playing out before their eyes. Then, from the orchestra pit, a lone piano began to play. Its haunting melody, devoid of human touch, resonated with deep emotion. Notes cascaded, drawing Mia and Alex toward it. As they approached, they spotted a series of notes, not musical, but written. Scribbled hastily on an old piece of parchment, it read, "Beneath the stage, where shadows play, where thespians once held their sway. Seek the truth, to light the way and free the spirit, come what may." With growing excitement, the duo sought access to the underbelly of the theater. Old props, costumes, and forgotten set pieces filled the dimly lit area. Mia's hand brushed against a dusty old lever, and as she pulled it, a hidden trapdoor revealed itself. Descending a creaky staircase, they found themselves in a forgotten dressing room. Portraits of actors and actresses from a bygone era adorned the walls. But one frame held not a picture but a mirror. Mia, drawn to it, felt a cold draft as she approached. In the mirror's reflection, not Mia's face, but that of a beautiful young woman, Clara, appeared. Tears streamed down her ethereal face. The mirror clouded and then cleared, showing a vision of Clara and Nathaniel sharing a tender moment. But the vision shifted, revealing a heart-wrenching scene of Clara receiving the news of Nathaniel's tragic demise. The mirror went dark, and when it cleared, Mia's reflection returned, her eyes wet with tears. She whispered, Nathaniel loved her deeply. Suddenly, the room grew colder. Poltergeist activity ensued. Old costumes flew off their racks, phantom smells of aged perfumes filled the air, and a spectral voice echoed, "Find it. Set me free." The urgency was evident. Scouring the room, Alex's foot stumbled upon a loose floorboard. Beneath it, nestled within a hidden compartment, lay a beautifully crafted wooden box. Intricate carvings adorned its surface, and as Mia opened it, a gasp escaped her lips. Inside was a dazzling array of jewelry, undoubtedly Nathaniel's treasure. Among the pieces, a locket stood out. Opening it revealed two portraits, one of Nathaniel and the other of Clara. Behind Clara's portrait was a folded note. To my dearest Clara, may this treasure secure your future, in this life and the next. Forever yours, Nathaniel. It was evident. Nathaniel had left this treasure for Clara, ensuring her well-being after his passing. But the tragedy of their separated souls, their love story cut short, was the chain binding him to Times Square. As Mia held the locket, a gust of wind circled the room, papers flew, and the spectral symphony of haunting reached its crescendo. Then, as suddenly as it started, calmness returned. Exiting the theater, Mia and Alex felt an unmistakable change. Times Square seemed brighter, the oppressive aura lifted. The tormented spirit of Nathaniel, it appeared, had found his peace. But as the sun set, casting long shadows upon the city, another question lingered in Mia's mind. What became of Clara? And was her spirit still tethered to this realm, searching for her lost love? Chapter 5. The echo of a lost heartbeat. The discoveries made in the Orpheum Theater were astonishing, but the quest was far from over. The energy around Times Square shifted. It felt lighter, but a faint aura of melancholy persisted, suggesting another spirit was present. Mia felt an empathetic pull, her connection to the ethereal realm deepening. Nathaniel's resolution had brought clarity, but Clara's restless spirit was a lingering enigma. Every fiber of Mia's being told her they were still ensnared in Clara's unfinished tale. The duo regrouped at Alex's apartment, where he'd laid out old maps of the city, tracing back to the era of Nathaniel and Clara. He had also managed to procure a local newspaper from the 1800s. Flipping through the brittle pages, Mia's eyes caught a headline: Mysterious Disappearance. Clara vanishing into thin air. The article detailed Clara's sudden and inexplicable disappearance days after Nathaniel's unfortunate demise. Could she have taken her own life, unable to bear the heartache? Mia wondered aloud. Alex shook his head. The article suggests she was last seen entering the Metropole, a grand hotel that once stood here. It was famous for its dances. Mia felt a sudden chill. The Metropole. I remember seeing an old building with that name while exploring. It's been converted into an upscale restaurant now. Determined to find answers, the two decided to pay the Metropole a visit. As they approached, they sensed the weight of countless memories echoing through time. The exterior retained its grandeur, but the modern refurbishments seemed to compete with the aura of the past. The massive wooden doors, with ornate engravings, beckoned them inside. The restaurant was bustling with evening patrons, the aroma of delectable cuisines wafting through the air. But to Mia, the fragrances were interspersed with phantom smells of old ballroom perfumes. She could almost hear the distant echo of laughter, chatter, and the soft rhythm of dancing feet. As they walked through, a particular area seemed to pull Mia like a magnet, the dance floor. Now a seating area, its once polished wooden floor was hidden under plush carpeting. As Mia stepped onto it, she felt a sudden jolt, and a vivid vision consumed her. She saw a distraught Clara, dressed in an elegant ball gown, dancing alone, the world blurring around her. The heartbreak in her eyes was palpable. As the vision faded, Mia felt a pressure on her hand, as if someone had briefly held it, trying to communicate their sorrow. Shaken, Mia shared her vision with Alex. "We need to find where Clara's room was," she urged. The maitre d', intrigued by their quest and the promise of a ghostly tale, offered his assistance. "There's a room on the 3rd floor," he whispered, "which has remained untouched since the hotel's early days. Some staff believe it's haunted." He led them to room 313. The door, though worn, was surprisingly free of dust. The moment Mia touched the doorknob, a barrage of residual hauntings washed over her. Scenes of Clara, alone in the room, writing letters, shedding tears, and gazing longingly out of the window played out. The room was pristine, frozen in time. The bed was neatly made, and the dressing table, with its ornate mirror, stood against one wall. On it lay a folded piece of paper. Mia picked it up with trembling hands. The handwriting matched the notes they'd previously discovered. It read, "To the world that may never understand, the heart yearns for what it cannot have. In love and sorrow, I'll find my stand, in the realm where love is the epitaph." The chilling implication of the note was clear. Despondent, Clara intended to join Nathaniel in the afterlife. A cold draft enveloped the room, and the mirror on the dressing table fogged up, revealing a message: "The bridge where souls depart." Mia and Alex exchanged a look of realization. "The Brooklyn Bridge," Alex murmured. "Many desolate souls leapt from there, seeking release from their pain." Convinced that the bridge held the key to resolving Clara's restless spirit, they set off, racing against time. The weight of 2 entwined fates rested upon their shoulders, and they were determined to ensure love prevailed over tragedy. Chapter 6. The bridge between 2 realms. New York City was alive with the vibrant hum of activity, but as Mia and Alex approached the Brooklyn Bridge, the atmosphere shifted. The bright city lights seemed dimmer, the sounds muffled, replaced by an eerie quiet. The bridge, with its Gothic arches and intricate suspension system, stood majestically, acting as both a passage for the living and, as legend had it, a bridge to the afterlife for many desolate souls. Walking along the pedestrian pathway, the duo felt the wind increase in intensity. With each step, the temperature dropped, and a dense fog surrounded them, limiting their vision to mere feet ahead. As Mia concentrated, she began to perceive faint orbs of light weaving in and out of the fog. These orbs, believed to be manifestations of spirit energy, danced around them, leading the way. Alex, ever the skeptic, dismissed them as mere reflections, but even he couldn't ignore the palpable sense of otherworldly presence. Suddenly, they heard a whisper, carried by the wind. It sounded like a mournful song. Following the tune, they were led to the bridge's highest point. Here, The wind howled with the sorrow of 1,000 lost souls. The moon, once hidden, broke through the clouds, casting an ethereal glow upon a lone figure standing at the edge. It was Clara. Her apparition was translucent, her dress flowing as if submerged in water. She looked out over the water with tears streaming down her face, seemingly unaware of Mia and Alex's presence. Mia took a hesitant step forward, extending her hand. "Clara," she whispered. The ghostly figure turned, her eyes searching Mia's face. The recognition was slow but unmistakable. You can see me?" she asked, her voice quivering. "We're here to help you," Mia responded gently. Alex, sensing the gravity of the moment, began to play a soft tune on his violin. It was a love ballad from the 1800s, which he hoped might resonate with Clara. Clara's spirit seemed to respond to the music. The heavy weight of sorrow in her eyes lightened slightly. "Nathaniel," she murmured. "I couldn't bear to be without him. But now, I am trapped in this limbo, reliving my sorrow every night." Mia nodded. "We've met Nathaniel. He's looking for you. You both deserve peace." Clara looked toward the water below, then back at Mia, desperation evident in her gaze. "But how? Every time I try to leap, I find myself back here, tormented by my choice and separated from my love." Alex stopped playing and spoke up. "The power of love is profound. It binds souls beyond life and death. Your bond with Nathaniel is strong, and it's that bond that keeps pulling you back. We need to find a way for both of you to move on, together." The fog around them started to thicken, and shadowy figures emerged, whispering and moaning. These were the spirits of others who had met tragic ends on the bridge, drawn to the intense energy of the moment. Mia clutched the pendant around her neck, drawing strength from it. "We must conduct a ritual. A ritual that acknowledges and releases both your pain and love. You don't need to be tethered to this place any longer." With that, Mia began to chant in an ancient tongue, while Alex played a haunting melody on his violin. The combined sound seemed to pierce through the dense fog, creating a protective circle around them. As the ritual progressed, the whispering spirits grew louder, their energy agitating the atmosphere. But Mia's voice remained steady, her resolve unwavering. Clara's apparition began to glow brighter, her form solidifying. From the other end of the bridge, another orb of light approached, rapidly gaining form and substance. It was Nathaniel, drawn by the powerful energies at play. The two spirits, once separated by death and despair, were now mere feet apart. They reached out, their fingers almost touching. With one final crescendo from Alex's violin and a powerful chant from Mia, a blinding light enveloped the bridge. When it dissipated, the fog had lifted, the whispering spirits had vanished, and the bridge stood in serene silence. Of Clara and Nathaniel, there was no sign. But in their place, at the very edge of the bridge, stood two white roses, intertwined, a symbol of their undying love. Mia and Alex exchanged relieved glances. The weight of sorrow that had plagued Times Square and its surrounding blocks felt notably lighter. But as they made their way back, Mia couldn't shake off the feeling that their journey was far from over. The restless spirits of New York still had stories to tell and mysteries to unravel. Chapter 7. The music of the streets. Mia and Alex had barely caught their breath from the emotionally charged confrontation on the Brooklyn Bridge when a chilling realization dawned on them. They had helped Clara and Nathaniel find peace, but a malevolent spirit remained. The vengeful entity that preyed on the everyday people of Times Square, causing mischief and terror, still lurked. Word had spread about Mia's unique abilities and Alex's soulful melodies. Their phones buzzed nonstop, with pleas for help from terrified city residents. The malevolent spirit, confined to the boundaries of Times Square and a 10-block radius, had become bolder, even vengeful, in its actions. Walking through the city, Mia's senses were heightened. The usually bustling streets felt off, as if a dark cloud loomed overhead. A cold wind whipped through the alleyways, and shadows seemed to shift on their own. Suddenly, a street performer, playing a worn-out accordion, caught Mia's attention. The notes he played were unlike anything she had ever heard, haunting and melancholic, yet strangely captivating. Drawn to the music, Mia and Alex approached the musician, only to discover his eyes were vacant, devoid of any emotion. Without warning, the accordion's tempo quickened. Windows shattered, car alarms blared, and the ground trembled beneath them. The very core of Times Square was resonating with this dark symphony, and Mia knew that they were once again in the presence of the malevolent spirit. Alex, thinking quickly, pulled out his violin and began to play along with the possessed street performer. Each note he played counteracted the dark energies, creating a harmony that began to stabilize the surroundings. Mia, concentrating hard, reached out with her senses to communicate with the spirit. "Who are you? What do you want?" The spirit's voice, a cacophony of 1,000 anguished souls, replied, "I am the essence of every broken dream, every shattered hope." This city promised fame and fortune, but all it gave was despair. Mia understood. This entity was a manifestation of the collective sorrow and pain of those who had come to the city with dreams of making it big but had been left broken and defeated. "We can help you," Mia offered. "But you need to stop hurting the innocent." The spirit roared in anger. Why should they be spared? "I am their fate, their destiny." Alex's playing grew more fervent, his fingers moving at lightning speed, creating a melody so powerful it began to drown out the spirit's haunting tune. With each note, light began to pierce the darkness, illuminating the street performer and forcing the spirit to reveal itself. The entity took the form of a swirling black vortex, drawing everything into its depths. But as Alex played, beams of light began to emerge from the vortex, representing the hopes and dreams of countless souls. Mia, seizing the opportunity, chanted an incantation she had learned from her grandmother. A protective barrier began to form around the spirit, containing its dark energy. The street performer, released from the spirit's grasp, collapsed, exhausted. The spirit, now trapped, raged against its confines. But Mia's barrier held firm. "Listen to me," Mia commanded, her voice echoing with authority. "You have a choice. Continue on this path of destruction, or find peace, accept the dreams that were broken, and move on." The spirit seemed to ponder her words, its swirling vortex slowing. "I am tired," it admitted, its voice now just a whisper. "So many dreams, so much pain." "We'll help you," Mia promised. "But you have to let go of the anger, the vengeance." The spirit hesitated for a moment, then, with a sigh that sounded like a gust of wind, it dissipated, leaving behind an empty space that quickly filled with the usual sounds of the city. The street performer, now awake, looked around in confusion. "What happened?" he asked. "You were possessed," Mia explained gently. "But you're safe now." As Mia and Alex left Times Square, the city seemed brighter, lighter. They had faced the very essence of despair and emerged victorious. But as they walked away, a cold breeze ruffled Mia's hair, and a soft whisper reached her ears. "Not all spirits seek peace," it warned. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over. Chapter 8. The Theater of Shadows with the malevolent spirit of Times Square confronted. Mia and Alex's confidence was bolstered. Yet, the mysterious whisper Mia heard sent shivers down her spine. The underbelly of New York's spectral world was vast, and they had barely scratched the surface. Upon returning to their apartment, Mia found a letter slid under their door. The parchment was aged, and the writing, immaculate cursive. It read, "Meet me at the Majestic Theater, midnight. There's more you need to understand." Puzzled, the duo decided to take the mysterious invite. Their adventure had only just begun. Majestic Theater, known for its age-old plays and vintage architecture, had a different feel at midnight. The glowing marquee lights were off, and a thick fog engulfed its entrance. Every step they took on the red-carpeted entrance echoed through the cold, silent night. The theater's main hall was dimly lit. The stage was set for The Phantom of the Opera, the play's props eerily realistic under the faint spotlight. But it wasn't the set that grabbed their attention. It was the audience. In every chair sat a shadow, an outline of a person but completely black. Their presence was felt, but their features were indistinguishable. Among them stood a tall man in a suit, the only tangible being, watching the stage intently. As Mia and Alex approached, he turned, his piercing blue eyes locking onto theirs. "Elle?" Mia inquired hesitantly. In the flesh, he responded, his voice smooth yet chilling. "Welcome to the Theater of Shadows." Mia, always the intuitive one, asked, "Who are they?" Gesturing to the shadowy audience. "They're trapped souls, victims of the malevolent spirit you encountered. It fed on their dreams, leaving them as mere shadows of their former selves," Elle explained, a tinge of sorrow in his eyes. Alex, gripping his violin tightly, asked, "Why bring us here?" Elle walked to the stage, beckoning them. "Because you too have a rare gift. With your music and Mia's connection to the spirit realm, you can free them." The weight of their task settled heavily on their shoulders. They were the city's only hope. Elle continued, "Each of these souls has a story, a dream they once held dear. You need to play their stories, Mia. Connect with them and set them free." With a deep breath, Mia closed her eyes and reached out with her senses. She felt the despair, the shattered dreams, and the lingering hope of each shadow. And one by one, she began to tell their tales. A ballet dancer who came to the city with dreams of performing on the grandest stages. A writer, with stories that could captivate any reader. A young musician, much like Alex, hoping to fill concert halls with his melodies. As Mia recounted each story, Alex played on his violin. The notes were pure, filled with the pain, joy, and dreams of each soul. With each story told and each melody played, a shadow would rise, taking on a more human form, and slowly fade away, freed from their torment. Hours passed, and the theater began to empty. But as the last shadow vanished, a cold wind blew through the hall, extinguishing the lights. In the darkness, a voice whispered, the same voice Mia had heard before, "Not all spirits seek peace." Suddenly, shadowy figures, darker and more menacing than the souls they had just freed, began to emerge from the stage. These were not trapped souls. These were entities of pure malice. Alex began to play a frantic tune, trying to fend them off. Mia, concentrating hard, started chanting, creating barriers to protect them. But the shadow entities were relentless, their numbers overwhelming. Elle stepped forward, his voice echoing through the hall, "Enough." With a wave of his hand, A blinding light illuminated the theater, forcing the shadow entities to retreat. Gasping for breath, Mia and Alex looked at their mysterious savior. "Who are you?" Alex demanded. Elle smiled. "Let's just say, I've been watching over this city for a very long time. But you two are special. Together, you have the power to rid New York of its spectral infestation. Remember, the battle is not against the souls trapped in torment, but against the darkness that seeks to consume them, and you." With that, Elle vanished, leaving Mia and Alex alone in the now empty theater. As dawn began to break, they stepped out onto the streets, the weight of their task heavier than before. The city that never sleeps had many secrets, and they were just beginning to uncover them. Chapter 9. Whispers in the dark. The city began to wake, the early morning sun casting long, cold shadows over Times Square. Mia and Alex, however, were far from the bustling streets. They stood on the rooftop of their apartment building, the wind rustling their clothes, the city stretching out beneath them. The events at the Majestic Theater were still fresh in their minds. Who was Elle? Mia mused aloud, her brow furrowed. And why did he bring us into this? We're just two musicians, not Ghostbusters or whatever this is. Alex took a deep breath, looking out into the horizon. There's a bigger picture here, Mia. These spirits, these hauntings, they're not random. They're connected. And somehow, we're at the center of it all. They both knew they couldn't ignore what was happening. The restless spirits of New York, the shadows that lurked, all had a tale that needed to be told. And as much as they wanted to deny it, they were the city's only hope. A few hours of restless sleep later, Mia had an idea. The library. If there's anything about the city's history, any clues about these spirits or Elle, it would be there. Their research at the New York Public Library was exhaustive. Among dusty tomes and faded newspapers, they found hints of a secret society, protectors of the city's supernatural balance, dating back centuries. The society, known only by a symbol, an ornate L, had vanished years ago, their legacy all but forgotten. A newspaper clipping from the 1920s caught Mia's eye. It was an article about a series of mysterious disappearances around Times Square, eerily similar to the events they were witnessing now. The article ended with an ominous note: the dark forces never truly vanish, they merely lurk, waiting for their time. As evening set in, they decided to visit one of the locations mentioned in the article, an old jazz club, now long abandoned. The entrance was hidden, down an alleyway forgotten by time. As they pushed open the creaking door, a cold breeze greeted them, the remnants of a melody lingering in the air. The club, though empty, felt alive. On stage, a lone piano sat, its keys still gleaming. Mia approached, a melody forming in her head. As she began to play, the atmosphere shifted. Suddenly, they weren't alone in a forgotten club. They were transported to its heyday. Jazz musicians, flapper dancers, laughter, and joy filled the room. But this was no joyful reunion. The joy was superficial, hiding a deep undercurrent of despair. Out of the corner of her eye, Mia saw a figure, a woman dressed in the style of the Roaring Twenties. She stood apart from the others, her eyes sad. As Mia approached, the woman whispered, "Help me." The woman introduced herself as Clara. She had been a singer at the club in the 1920s. She told them about a fateful night when, after a particularly riveting performance, she had met a charismatic man, one who promised her fame and fortune. Desperate to make a name for herself, she had agreed, not realizing the cost. She had become bound to the club, her spirit unable to move on, trapped in an endless loop of that night. As Clara shared her story, a chilling realization struck Mia and Alex. The dark force they were battling was ancient, its roots embedded deep within the city's history. It preyed on dreams, ensnaring unsuspecting souls. Determined to help Clara, Alex began to play a soft tune on his violin. As the notes resonated through the club, the atmosphere began to change. The spectral patrons began to fade, and with one final, grateful smile, so did Clara. As they left the club, the weight of their task pressing down on them, Mia turned to Alex. "We can't do this alone." Alex nodded. "We need to find the remnants of that society, the protectors. We need to find Elle." The city's skyline loomed overhead, its countless lights hiding countless secrets. But one thing was clear, their journey was only beginning. Chapter 10. The meeting with Elle the following morning, with determination burning in their hearts, Mia and Alex revisited the library. Hidden among the documents and clippings they had earlier unearthed, Mia found an ornate business card with just one letter printed in the center, an ornate L. The back of the card was blank, save for an old New York address and a time, midnight. It was clear this was their next lead. As night fell, they made their way to the location. The address led them to a narrow alley in the heart of Manhattan. Old brick walls towered around them, and a single street lamp flickered, casting eerie, dancing shadows on the cobblestones. A nondescript door stood at the end of the alley, appearing as though it hadn't been opened in years. Mia reached out and gave a tentative knock. The door creaked open of its own accord, revealing a spiral staircase heading down into the darkness. They exchanged glances and descended. Below, they found themselves in an expansive, candlelit chamber. The room was lined with ancient books and scrolls, mysterious artifacts from various eras, and at the center stood a massive round table. And there, sitting at its head, was a man who seemed ageless, his features sharp and eyes piercing. "You've been seeking me," the man began, his voice resonating through the chamber. "I am Lucian, the last of the protectors, the last of the L lineage." Alex cleared his throat. "We need your help. The city is under threat, and we believe you hold the key to its salvation." Lucian listened intently as they recounted their experiences, nodding occasionally. "You've stumbled upon an ancient evil," Lucian explained. "A force that feeds on ambition and dreams, ensnaring the unwary. And as New York grew, so did its appetite." Mia leaned forward. "Why us? Why are we being drawn into this?" Lucian hesitated for a moment, his gaze settling on Mia. "The spirits are drawn to your music. It's a rare gift. It has the power to bridge worlds, to heal. Alex, your violin is imbued with energies that can combat this darkness." "But how do we stop it?" Alex pressed. "The final confrontation is near," Lucian warned. "But first, you must gather 3 artifacts that hold the power to seal away the darkness." He went on to describe the artifacts: a crystal vial containing the essence of the city's first sunrise, an ancient melody written but never played, and a silver locket holding the heartache of 100 lost souls. The weight of the task ahead was daunting, but Mia and Alex knew they couldn't back down. Lucian, sensing their determination, handed Mia a map, detailing where they could find these items. As they prepared to leave, Lucian added, "Remember, the dark force is aware of you now. It will do everything in its power to stop you." Exiting the chamber, the early hours of the morning greeted them. The city was still, the silence only broken by the distant hum of traffic. They had a mission, and time was of the essence. But as they stepped onto the streets of Manhattan, an eerie fog rolled in, and shadowy figures began to emerge. The city's spirits were restless, and the darkness was closing in. Chapter 11. The first artifact. The fog enveloped everything, thickening with each step Mia and Alex took. But with the map Lucian had provided, they felt a direction amid the chaos. Their first stop was the abandoned Eastland Theater, the rumored hiding place of the ancient melody written but never played. As they approached, its once grand marquee was rusted, and the posters had faded to unrecognizable colors. Pushing open the doors, they stepped into the past. The velvet seats, though covered in dust, stood in perfect formation, awaiting an audience that hadn't arrived for decades. The ceiling, decorated with intricate designs, held a massive chandelier that glittered dimly in the sparse light filtering through the broken windows. Alex whispered, "Let's split up. We need to find that sheet music." Mia nodded, heading towards the stage while Alex began searching the balconies. Mia felt a pull towards the grand piano stationed center stage. On its stand was a sheet covered in dust. Brushing it off, she found a handwritten composition titled "Lament of the Lost." However, it was incomplete, with notes trailing off after the first few bars. A sudden noise echoed through the theater, drawing her attention to the stage's side wings. A shadowy figure darted out of view. Not waiting to see who or what it was, Mia pocketed the sheet music and hurried to find Alex. Meanwhile, Alex combed the balcony, looking through old playbills and programs. The feeling of being watched intensified, and the temperature dropped. Glancing around, he caught sight of an apparition, a woman dressed in 1920s attire, hovering a few rows behind him, her face pale and eyes vacant. Not wanting to alert the spirit, Alex carefully began to retreat. But as he reached the stairs, the phantom let out a haunting melody, freezing him in place. It was the tune from the sheet music Mia had found. The ghostly woman moved closer, her voice echoing the unfinished notes over and over. Down below, Mia heard Alex's predicament. With a deep breath, she began to sing the notes she'd seen, filling in the gaps with her intuition and her gift. The haunting melody turned harmonious, drowning out the ghost's eerie repetition. As the last note resonated in the theater, the apparition vanished, leaving a cold stillness behind. Alex, released from the phantom's trance, found Mia on the stage. "That was close," he murmured, "but it seems we have the first piece of the puzzle." Mia unfolded the sheet music, examining the notes. "I filled in the gaps, but I feel there's more to this melody than meets the eye." As they prepared to leave, they noticed something odd. The theater, previously shrouded in decades of neglect, seemed somewhat restored. The chandelier shone brighter, and the seats appeared less dusty. The theater, it seemed, had come back to life with the melody's completion. Exiting the Eastland Theater, the fog had lifted slightly. The city's spirits seemed calmer, but Mia and Alex knew they were far from done. With the map in hand and the ancient melody secured, they set out for the next artifact. Chapter 12. Shadows at the square. Mia and Alex had barely made it a block away from the Eastland Theater when the atmosphere changed. Times Square, usually alive with the energy of countless people, lights, and activity, now bore an eerie stillness. The vibrant electronic billboards, a testament to the modern age, flickered intermittently, casting an unpredictable and ghostly glow over the streets. Lucian's map, which had seemed so clear just moments before, grew frustratingly ambiguous. Each street they tried to take leading back into another, as if they were trapped in an impossible labyrinth. "Something's wrong," Alex muttered, glancing around. "We've passed that same hot dog stand 3 times now." Mia's brow furrowed. It's the spirit. It knows we're onto something, and it's trying to disorient us. As they walked, they noticed the figures of people ahead. But instead of moving naturally, these figures glided and jerked as though being played back on a damaged film reel. As they drew closer, the figures took on the shape of shadow people, dark silhouettes with no discernible features. Their movements were unpredictable and disjointed. Stopping in their tracks, Mia whispered, their residual hauntings, memories of the past trapped in a loop. But why here? Why now? Before Alex could respond, a cacophony of phantom sounds broke out. The unmistakable clatter of old-time New York, horse-drawn carriages, newsboys shouting headlines, the far-off sound of jazz music. It was as if they had been transported back to the early 20th century. Suddenly, one of the shadow figures broke away from its loop, heading directly for Mia and Alex. Panicking, Alex grabbed Mia's hand, and they began to run, weaving between the dark apparitions, trying to find a way out of the square's spectral maze. The more they ran, the more the environment around them shifted. The modern storefronts and flashy screens gave way to older architecture, brick roads, gas lamps, and storefronts advertising goods and prices from another era. Ducking into an alleyway to catch their breath, they were confronted by a different kind of apparition. A ghostly newsboy, his form more defined than the shadow people, his face etched in sadness. He held out an old paper, the headline reading, "Tragedy at Times Square. Dozens disappear." Mia took a cautious step forward. What happened? The newsboy's voice was distant, echoing from the past. A curse was cast. Every soul in Times Square vanished. They're all here, trapped between worlds. His form began to waver. Help us. Break the curse. Suddenly, a rush of cold air surrounded them, and the newsboy vanished. The modern-day Times Square began to reappear around them, but the sense of unease remained. Mia and Alex exchanged a worried glance. This was bigger than they realized. The curse, whatever it was, had ensnared countless souls, leaving them trapped in this spectral limbo. "We need to find the next artifact," Mia said with newfound determination. "It might be the key to breaking this curse." Consulting Lucien's map once more, they set their sights on their next destination, knowing the weight of countless trapped souls rested on their shoulders. We hope you have enjoyed our creepy Times Square ghost, paranormal scary story. Please visit us at Paranormal Untold Stories. Come to listen to more of our scary stories collection. Paranormal Untold Stories encourages you to contact us if you have your own untold story that you would like our professionals team to put online as a scary story. Thank you. Please follow our YouTube channel, Paranormal Untold Stories, and encourage others to do the same. Paranormal Untold Stories.